let's talk about coalitions, but specifically looking at who is likely to become vice president. That question of the vice presidency is important because of the developments that played out earlier this week, particularly on Monday. On Monday, there were two things that happened. The first thing is that the Freedom Front Plus confirmed that they are bringing back the Phala Phala issue to Parliament. And what specifically are they bringing back? The Section 89 report by Justice Sandile Ngcobo, former Chief Justice Sandile Ngcobo, which actually said that the president's version had issues and made a prima facie finding that the president had violated the Constitution and a variety of laws. That's what they want to bring back. The ATM party as well said that they want to bring that issue back. And what does bringing it back mean? It means a vote for there to be an impeachment proceeding. Not an impeachment at that stage, just the proceeding, to actually go in and properly examine as Parliament what went down in Phala Phala. That's the first thing. The second thing that happened was that the Constitutional Court sent out directives requesting papers and submissions from various parties in the matter of EFF versus the National Assembly. And this is a matter that looks at whether the decision to actually block the process of going to the second stage by Parliament was rational and was done on solid ground. If either one of these two measures succeeds, there is going to be a Phala Phala hearing in Parliament. And that creates two risks that the president will be facing. And it's unlikely that the president wants to explore the issues that happened on his farm and the sources of the currency that were on his farm. And also, he may not want to explore what happened after the money was stolen, because several things occurred there which were deemed to be unlawful, ultra vires, the going to Namibia by people who worked for the president, but not under the ambit of the police proper and not following all of the process, like reporting into a police station, that kind of a thing. There's something in that story that I think, just rationally looking at it, that the president may not want to be examined fully. Now, coming to today, there are several things that are happening today that are of key significance. The first thing that's happening is that there is an NEC meeting today. And this meeting is the one which is supposed to deal with the various permutations and combinations and the preliminary discussions that political parties have been having with the ANC and to consider the options that are on the table, right? So that's a critical thing. Same time that is happening, we saw young members of the ANC actually protesting outside the ANC headquarters. What are they protesting? They're protesting this idea of an ANC and DA coalition on the basis that the ideologies don't match, on the basis that the DA has actually run a campaign demonizing the ANC, and on the basis that there's a significant amount of distrust and also concern about what actually the DA would do in this kind of a coalition. That's happening today. And then an article came out today as well. And this article stipulates that, Deputy President Paul Mashatile is worried that those in the ANC are pushing for a coalition with the Democratic Alliance. Those in the ANC who are pushing for a coalition with the Democratic Alliance are doing so and offering him as the sacrificial lamb and trying to put John Steenhuisen to be the Deputy President of South Africa in that coalition deal. And this comes as the DA is said to have previously indicated to the ANC that they would want to have its leader take up the position of Deputy President as part of the coalition talks. So that becomes significant, right? What does the Constitution say? Section 89 of the Constitution states the following: the National Assembly, by a resolution adopted with the supporting vote of at least 2/3 of its members, may remove the president from office only on the grounds of A, a serious violation of the Constitution or the law, B, serious misconduct, or C, inability to perform the functions of the office. Now, this may pertain to issues around the Phala Phala matter, because as you remember, the Section 89 panel report said that there were issues, right? So that's already a flag. Just keep that in mind. This is what the Constitution says. Then Section 89.2 says the following: anyone who has been removed from the office of the president in terms of subsection 1A or B may not receive any benefits from that office and may not serve in any public office. This section, 89(2), really creates a disincentive for anybody sitting in the position of president to actually want to be removed through this particular process, right? Because then you lose your benefits. This is why people prefer to resign rather than to actually have a direct removal as a result of this process, right? So in that instance, what then happens? Then you actually then have if the president is removed, and we've already discussed what the developments on Monday are and how they could likely lead to the president's removal. This is what the next section says about the acting president, section 90. When the president is absent from the republic or otherwise unable to fulfill the duties of the president, or during a vacancy in the office of the president, an office bearer in the order below acts as president. Then they give the order: the deputy president, the minister designated by the president, a minister designated by other members of the cabinet, the speaker until the National Assembly designates one of its other members, right? Then we go to section 90.2. An acting president has the responsibilities, powers, and functions of the president. Section 3. Before assuming the responsibilities, powers, and functions of the president, the acting president must swear or affirm faithfulness to the Republic and obedience to the Constitution in accordance with Schedule 2. A person who as acting president has sworn or affirmed faithfulness to the Republic need not repeat the swearing or affirming procedure for any subsequent term as acting president during the period when the person next elected president assumes office. So this is what the Constitution says. So there's a real possibility in this particular set of scenarios that if the president is removed from any vote or decides to step down from any process, that John Steenhuisen could actually become president of South Africa, right? That's a very real reality. So let's go back and listen to what Fikile Mbalula had to say about the negotiations, and to really get a feel for what the ANC position was from his side of the camp, and also to evaluate whether or not Paul Mashatile's concerns are justified, and then begin to think about whether or not he's correct to have those concerns, or if rather it's correct to have the ANC choose its leadership in their own conference and then have that leadership change in a coalition discussion.
Ramaphosa is the president of the ANC, and if you come to us with those demands, forget. If you come to us with a demand that Ramaphosa must step down as the president, that is not going to happen. That is a no-go area to everyone. It's a no-go area. It's a no-go area. You come to us with that demand, forget. And I've heard some of you murmuring even in the bathrooms. Ramaphosa, when ANC loses power, is going to resign. Why did he stand as a president? You stand in an organization in bad and good times. These are bad times. When we signed to stand, people have asked us a question, Nomvula and others, are you going to step down? When we agreed in Nazareth to the branches of the ANC that we stood, it meant even for occasions like this. And we are leadership. Our leadership is tested. You don't run away. The ANC is going to have a National Executive Committee where we're going to go to conduct a deep analysis about the outcome of the election. Our statement that we have read guide us in relation to the outcome and what we seek to do. The outcome is directing us towards shared power with others. And that's what we are processing right now.
So it's very interesting that he doesn't actually mention that as part of their conditions, they will also want to protect the vice president. He's very strong on the presidency, but very, very silent on the question of the vice presidency. This to me indicates that there's some credence to the theory that in the negotiations as they stand thus far, the Ramaphosa camp is very clear on him, but is actually willing to let Paul Mashatile go. And we've also seen some very critical reporting from pro-Ramaphosa media and publications, which has been hyper-skeptical of Paul Mashatile without necessarily extending the same level of scrutiny to other senior politicians higher than him, which would be President Ramaphosa. So from these statements by Fikile Mbalula, I actually do think that, hey, it's not so far-fetched for anybody in Paul Mashatile's camp or anybody within the ANC to think, hang on, are these guys actually going to give up the vice president that we elected to let John Steenhuisen, who is a president of another party, which we didn't elect, to actually come into a position of power? Let's hear what else Fikile Mbalula had to say.
MK party talks, we're talking to everybody. There's nobody who are not going to talk to. Like I said to you at the beginning, when I was talking to you outside, let me repeat it again. We've been approached by political parties, as it is normal, and the outcome is clear. Nobody has got outright majority. So we'll talk to everybody. We'll talk to everybody. And I don't want to distort things. We're talking to the DA, we are talking to the MK party, we're talking to EFF, we're talking to everybody. Because the election did not give us outright majority. Those who don't want to talk, we can't force them. We're looking at our scenarios, we're looking at the option before us. Otherwise, there will be no talk if we reach the outright majority.
Yeah.
I cannot stand here and tell you that I've got a mandate to tell you that we will not talk to everybody. I've got a mandate from the leadership of the ANC as of yesterday that we must engage with political parties who are engaging with us. And political parties have approached us. And we will be talking to them. We've got a team led by the Secretary General that will be talking to everybody in the talks about talks. And we'll report about those talks. And the NEC will then take a decision informed by its own analysis that it would have received on these matters, what needs to be done. So that's where we are. Talks about talks are in full swing. We are engaged and we are open to engagement to anybody. We've got our own principles that we have long adopted in terms of coalitions. And we said that a coalition is a consequence. When you don't have a majority, you deal with that. There are many options on the table, including a rerun, including going back to the benches, including working with others. Those who want to work with you to constitute government. We need stability in this country. And like I said, in the statement of the ANC, we will put the interest of the people of South Africa first. The coalitions have not worked for us in this country. It has brought instability and all of that. But it is the will of the people. It is the will of the people, and that is what we must accept. Analysis. News 24 again. I made an example. I'm not saying we are not guided by ideology. We are guided by ideology. But the circumstances with your ideology force you to even work with people who necessarily do not share the same perspective as yours. We have had strange coalitions in this local government arrangements that we have. Even with people who said that we will not work with the ANC, but the outcome of the elections becomes something else. And then you must then begin to define models of the working together. The problem with the local government arrangement, it does not have models. It is just working together. A mayor changes, come to a mayor changes over a weekend, and then you go and work with others. National government, you want to achieve stability, constitutionality, the rule of law, all of those things must then begin to guide us in this part. But equally, how do you satisfy the interest of the ANC constituency that voted those 6 million people and more? How are they going to be served by the working relations between parties? Or is just, there is no honor among thieves, let's work together. It doesn't work like that. You've got to think deep and hard. And that's what we're doing. I can assure you. And we can assure you, as the ANC, we are applying our mind and all of that in terms of this. So I don't say that we're not guided by ideology. We do. And we are guided also by principles.
Right. So let's actually think about some of these points that were made by Fikile Mbalula. And one of the things I want to actually put to you is a question. Does the whole ANC right now, in leadership and on the grassroots level, support Mr. Ramaphosa? There are some in the ANC who do not support Mr. Ramaphosa, but support the ANC itself. There are some in the ANC who still support Jacob Zuma and lean towards the MK. So the reason why some people may not support Mr. Ramaphosa is because they view his current performance as having been the biggest failure of the ANC in electoral history. They view the ANC as having been the biggest loser in the election. And if you think about where they were sitting in 2014, they were sitting on 62%. That drops to 57%. That now drops to 40%. 2019 and 2024, Mr. Ramaphosa was the face on the poster. He was the face on the t-shirt. So there are some who are thinking, no, man, this leadership is not working for our organization, and our organization is in fast decline. We saw big losses for the ANC in 2021 in the local government election. And some people are looking at 2026 and saying, that's close by. And if we don't get our act together by 2026, the ANC will be finished. So not everyone supports Mr. Ramaphosa in the organization that may still be hardcore ANC. But secondly, there are people who are concerned about power dynamics. When you're in your second term, your power begins to diminish the closer you get to the end of that second term. This is why we've seen ANC leaders who are approaching the end of their term be easily pushed out. We saw Thabo Mbeki not finish his term. We saw also Jacob Zuma not finish his term. They were pushed out in different ways, but the pattern seems relatively clear. Why does this happen? Is because towards the end, you are really a lame duck. This is a term that is used in America to describe second-term presidents, because you can't run again, right, constitutionally. So as you get to the end of your second term, you become a lame duck. That means the power that you can summon from the office diminishes the closer you get to the deadline. So the closer you get to 2029, the less your power is. But even with a very contested situation such as this, even now, you may not have that much power as the president, especially under conditions where you command only 40% of the base. So there are questions around, is there real support for Mr. Ramaphosa? Then there are questions around ideology, history, trust, as they pertain to making a deal with the Democratic Alliance. And this is what was said by Lindiwe Sisulu in her interview with Newsroom Africa when she was speaking to Clement Mashatile. No, she was speaking to SABC, sorry, in her interview with SABC with Clement.
Why do you believe a coalition with the DA would be catastrophic for all the efforts that have been made to transform the country? What are your views on that?
Because basically we are so ideologically at variance with the DA. I cannot imagine how it would be for us now, with all the problems that we have, be able to take the country forward, having to drag along people that are not, they don't have the same issues on their shoulders as we do. We have been in government for a very long time. The electorate has punished us over and over because we have not been able to deliver on the things that they need most and on the things that we have promised them. We would need at this point to very seriously take on a partner or partners that will help us deliver on the promises that we have made since God knows when, 1994. But I want to take you back sometime in history of this country when we had a situation where we felt that perhaps the best way forward would be to have a government of national unity. We brought in the Democratic, the party, the National Party, and ourselves, and we formed a government. And for the first 2, 3, 4 months, it seemed like we would be able to cover the responsibilities that each one of us were committed to. But halfway through that, and I applaud the National Party for having taken this decision. The National Party sat down and said to us as a government, look, we are at such variance ideologically. We have different constituencies to deliver to. We've made promises to our constituencies, which we will not be able to deliver on. This relationship is not going to take us anywhere, and we would like to withdraw. We were shocked because at that particular time, we had not gone into the entrails of delivery and how it affects people on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
And we agreed, and they took their decision and they left. And I applaud them for that. It was an honest decision. It was a kind of decision that was driven by a conscience that they're not delivering for their people. Here we are with the national ANC, with the ANC. Possibly we will need partners, but we need partners who are ideologically linked to our own ideology, partners who will be able to deliver on that which we have promised our people.
Yeah.
No one is further from that than the DA. Why would we go for the one party that is completely at variance with what we believe in?
Yeah.
You look at the Western Cape and tell me what it is that the Western Cape has done to change the lives of our people. Maybe the same can be said for very many other parts of the country. But specifically, the difference in delivery and the difference in the way that government has responded to our people is glaring. You drive down the road from Parliament to the airport, and you'll be able to see the shacks on one side, or whatever it is. Nothing has changed for our people in the Western Cape.
What about a partnership where the DA occupies key positions in Parliament and still allows the ANC to be the executive? It doesn't compromise on the party's policies. You still have space as the ANC to do your work as the executive, but they hold you accountable in Parliament by occupying some key positions there.
What key position are we talking about?
The position of Speaker. It could be the position of chairs of different committees in Parliament.
Why do we need to be monitored? Why do we need to be monitored? The system that we have right now works very perfectly. We have our own system in which we account to our people what it is that we're doing and what it is that we're not doing. We don't need a class monitor from the DA. Why would we take one party that is so ideologically at odds with ourselves?
Right. So this question of ideology that is being articulated by Lindiwe Sisulu is not a small issue. And she's not the only one who has this view. She's just the one who went to speak to the media about it. But you must make no mistake that there are people concerned about this. Now, what are the ideological differences? When it comes to how to deal with the race tensions in South Africa, the Democratic Alliance approaches this issue from non-racialism. Other political parties approach it from anti-racism. They view the issues of racial injustice as still being pertinent to South Africa. There's a book that was written by Dr. Susan Mpofu-Walsh, which talks about the new apartheid. And in that book, he outlines how structural and systemic discrimination and racism continue, especially when you look at spatial planning, especially when you look at education opportunities, when you look at the composition of boardrooms, when you look at land ownership. Those patterns still exist. And a lot of the pain that was caused by colonialism, by apartheid, has also not been addressed. So the D8 likes to move fast forward. They skip the difficult conversation about social redress, and they want to just live in the present where they say, we don't see color, we only see merit. I have a question also about their merit argument, because they were complaining about this young man who recently got an appointment in Gauteng, who has 2 master's degrees, right? While their leader has got a matric certificate. So when it comes to the question of, do they really believe in merit? I don't think that's particularly true. Even the mayor of, the premier of the Western Cape right now also has a matric certificate. So they shift the goalposts when they conveniently want to. But going back to this question of issues of race in South Africa, they approach these issues with a dismissiveness. Some of their leaders even have had moments where they started trying to pitch to the public defenses, justifications, or rationalizations of colonialism to say, hey, it wasn't all that bad if you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But that's particularly flawed reasoning, right? Because let's say you stab me 6 times in the side of my torso, and I get a tattoo after, I get surgery to cover up those scar wounds. Then the person who stabbed me comes and says, hey, the stabbing wasn't all that bad if you think about it, because now you have these beautiful tattoos. Like what? Right? So I think the illogical stance is clear there. But when it comes to policies of social justice, the Democratic Alliance also, and even worker protections, has taken a position that is very anti the ethos of the ANC. And I think it's important for us to use the same premise that is being applied on other parties to the DA. When the markets say they don't want the EFF or the MK because their manifestos are radical, they don't actually then say ANC DA, the DA will want to implement everything in its manifesto. I find that to be contradictory. The DA has said that they want to scrap the minimum wage. The DA has said that they want to scrap BEE. They've said that they want to scrap employment equity. These are things that they've said. They oppose affirmative action, the same affirmative action that has given opportunities to children from rural areas and townships to access degree programs that they would not otherwise have been able to access simply because there was a small discrepancy in their marks. It's not true that people get into medicine with 60% or 30% or anything like that. Typically what happens is that children from rural areas who have marks in the 80s are given that opportunity, right? And sometimes children who are coming from the suburbs who are white, who have 85s or maybe 87s, are then overlooked because that person who got an 80 in a township in a rural area is deemed to be more deserving because of the conditions which they came through to get that 85 or 80. So it's not a reality that, the people getting admitted into medical school are simply people with 30%. But the DA wants to do away with all of this. And all that does is it takes away opportunity in a country where opportunity was limited and restricted through the Bantu Education Act only to a few people, only to an elite, only to a one racial group. That is particularly problematic. When it comes to economic policies, the DA approaches economic policies from a position of austerity. They want to reduce the public service that provides healthcare in hospitals, the public service that provides policing. They view the public service to be bloated. And when it comes to legislation, the DA voted no on the Bella Bill. They voted no on hate crimes because they don't think that hate crimes should be policed. They want free speech. They don't actually think that some of the things that people have been speaking about are problematic. It's an issue. Appropriation bill, they voted against it. They voted against employment equity. They voted against the minimum wage. They voted against, traditional courts bill. They voted against various other bills of the ANC. And I think the ANC is fair to ask, hang on, Are these really partners that we want to get into? But beyond the issues of ideology comes, to me, the issue of trust. The DA's manifesto clearly states that the problem in South Africa is corruption, crime, cadre deployment. And the perpetrator of those three problems is the ANC. They've spent the last 5, 6, 7 years talking about they want to rescue SA from the ANC. How then can you enter a situation where you trust that coalition partner to be able to go the distance with you? If stability is the issue, are you not more stable working with people who have the same ideological framework as you, and also people who haven't actually displayed the same level of appetite to derail your political program and to push a political program opposed to yours? Ideology does matter in the bigger scheme of things, especially long term. Because if you follow the ideology of the DA, where everything is privatized, where water, electricity are privatized, what that does is it creates the inequalities that currently exist in Cape Town. I would never want to live in Cape Town because the rentals are exorbitant. And that's because they haven't regulated, entities such as Airbnb, which has pushed the price of rentals up. The other factors is that, the spatial planning is such that if you don't live in the affluent areas of Cape Town, you'll spend a lot of time in traffic just trying to get to work. Then there are the, wealth disparities there as well. Cape Town is a deeply unequal city and has a lot of issues around that, not to mention the conditions in the Cape Flats, the gangsterism that has still not been dealt with, the conditions in Khayelitsha, Gugulethu, Langa, Philippi, you name it. They're not good. One of the most unequal parts of South Africa remains Cape Town right now. So if you follow the ideology of the DA, yes, you get a wealthy and affluent part of South Africa, best serviced, with fast internet, that kind of thing. But then the rest of South Africa then becomes a marginalized area. When I last went to Cape Town, the Uber driver told me that there's Cape Town, then there's Ekapa. And Ekapa kufana as a Cape Town, which is to say that there's a big difference in your lived experiences in both of those places. So I think these concerns are fair to consider, and we'll see how things all play out, because this question of who gets that vice presidential position is not insignificant. In fact, it is one of the most significant parts of the coalition negotiations. What do you think, though? Do you think that it doesn't matter who becomes vice president, or do you think that it's very important who becomes vice president? Let's have a conversation.